Valve announced the Steam Deck on July 15th, 2021, and after almost a year of waiting, I finally have one in my hands. I was excited to get my hands on the Steam Deck because it not only allows me to take some of my favorite games, such as Cities Skylines, Civilization, and Tropico on the go, but it might also open up PC gaming and the Steam Workshop to a huge new market of gamers at a very reasonable price point. Today we're going to test out the Steam Deck, see how it handles simulators like the ones I mentioned, and see if it's a good PC replacement or even supplement for the money. I know this video is very different than the usual content on this channel, so if you like it, please drop me a like and a comment letting me know. With that, let's jump right in. My initial impression of the Steam Deck was that it was large. As a day one Switch owner, this thing looks and feels huge in comparison to the Switch. That said, it also feels very good. It's sturdy, and it's not at all uncomfortable in your hands. Both myself and my 7-year-old daughter have had long gaming sessions without being uncomfortable, though I believe she generally props up something behind it since it is a bit heavy, clocking in at nearly 23 ounces compared to the Switch's 14. The build quality of the Steam Deck is absolutely fantastic. The button layout, though I was dubious about it having owned a Steam Link and not really enjoying the controller, is great. It feels natural and all the buttons add a ton of flexibility which is needed for games that are natively played with a mouse and keyboard. The Steam Deck runs SteamOS, an Arch Linux-based operating system that is a pretty nifty Steam launcher, as well as a KDE Plasma 5 desktop. Generally, SteamOS is pretty great, but it's not without faults. When I tried to turn my device on for the first time, I got stuck in an update loop and had no idea how to reset. I had to do a bit of searching on Reddit to figure it out, only to see that many other people had the same issue. This thing, for better or for worse, is not a console. This is a pocket gaming PC, so you get the good and the bad that come with that. You have a ton of freedom and flexibility to change things and tweak settings, but no guarantee that every game you can install on it will actually run. You're going to need to get well acquainted with ProtonDB, which offers a ton of tips on which games actually work on the deck and how other gamers were able to get them working. Generally, this is a better resource than the Deck Verified program, which uses these symbols to show how compatible a game is. Though the Deck Verified program is pretty good, I have definitely attempted to launch games that said they were compatible or partially compatible, only to have them immediately crash back to SteamOS. But more on that later, because Cities Skylines is a great example of this. The specs of the Steam Deck are pretty amazing for a computer of this size. The Steam Deck sports a Zen 2 4-core 2.4 to 3.5 GHz processor, 16 GB of LPDDR5 RAM, a 7-inch 720p LCD display that can output up to 8K when docked, and it comes in 3 different configurations, with the main differences being storage, size, and speed. The top-tier model also comes with an anti-glare etched glass screen, and that's the model that I picked up. The deck has expandable storage with the ability to accept micro SD cards and is famously upgradable. Now, I didn't mention anything about battery life because it's going to vary based upon the types of games that you play. If you're like me and you play a lot of simulators or you play a lot of AAA games, you're going to get fairly poor battery life, 2 hours or so in my experience. But if you play a lot of indie games, you might get even more than that. Your mileage may vary. So let's get into what you're probably interested in, gaming performance, and we'll jump into Cities Skylines first. Upon launching the game, you're greeted with a screen telling you that the game is not fully supported and may have a few issues, mostly related to needing to use the on-screen keyboard and mouse to select from menus rather than the D-pad. After going through the Paradox launcher, the game boots right into the main menu with all of my mods already installed, just as it would on my PC. But the default controller options would not work for me. Mouse and keyboard support didn't work at all, so I ended up using a community configuration that worked right off the bat. And with that, I was able to enable the mods that I wanted to play with. Right away, I was greeted with issues from certain mods. I couldn't get the patch loader mod working appropriately. Now that said, there is a Linux-specific installation guide, and with a bit of tinkering, I might have been able to get it to work. But that means that all of the mods that depend on this particular mod don't work either, including FPS Booster. After enabling all of the mods that I wanted, I attempted to start a new game, only for it to crash to the SteamOS launcher. So I ventured over to ProtonDB, where you can see that this issue is common, which is frustrating since the game is verified to be partially playable. On Proton, the game is shown as a Linux native game, but many folks, myself included, can vouch that the native Linux version will not run on the deck. And from here I struggled, going into the boot settings and selecting a number of different versions of Proton in an effort to get the game running, as well as adding startup options, none of which seemed to make a difference. Feeling a bit desperate, I went into the options menu and noticed that all of the graphics quality settings were set to their maximums. Now, from my experience and a lot of tinkering, the main problem is the texture quality. If it's set to high, the deck will crash. But even though I could turn the shadow quality and the level of detail settings to high or very high, I'm going to keep everything on the lowest quality settings for the duration of the video to try to eke out as much performance as I can. And with that, I can boot right into the game, mods and all. So now that we have the game booted up, albeit with low graphics settings, how does it play? Well, so-so. The game initially seemed locked at 30 FPS, even though I verified within the deck's UI that this was not the case. And it looked janky. And I mean really, really janky. But it was playable, for quite some time too. I decided to dock the deck to play this game, which I would recommend that you do as well, and all of this footage was captured on a capture card. Now I did that because playing directly on the deck is frustrating. The mouse is incredibly sensitive and I found myself going back and forth trying to click on things. Now that the deck was docked, I had a mouse and keyboard plugged in, although this was not without issue. I used the middle mouse button as my camera modifier. Though the deck recognized the middle button, it would not allow this modifier to work, and I was forced to use the keyboard to rotate the map, tilt, and pan around. So I started a small city and grew it to a population of about 17,000, and things worked well for the most part. In this video, you can see my FPS counter in the upper left-hand corner, and you can see that I oscillate between 20 and 30 FPS. I played for hours and left the deck simulating for a few hours on top of that. And with all of the game's DLCs installed and a growing city, the game remained surprisingly playable throughout. That said, when you zoom into a busy area, my frame rates did drop as low as 13 FPS. If you played Cities Skylines for any length of time, you'll know that this is acceptable for short bursts, so long as it's not consistent. All was well until I went to save, upon which the game immediately crashed. I attempted to load an autosave, only to find that my autosaves were disabled by default, a truly disappointing outcome considering I had them enabled on my main PC.
You prepared for that assault, mother?
I think this was a one-off experience because I have been able to save other cities, but it's definitely something you'll want to be aware of. Now I think this occurred along with my settings being on high because that is the settings I had on my PC at one point in time. This would have been preferences from months ago. So you're going to want to make sure that you go through all of your settings with a fine-tooth comb. So a small city works fine, but big cities are a challenge on the deck. I loaded up Tutoria, which did boot, but it was unstable and eventually crashed. So don't even try a city like Verde Beach, it's just not going to happen. So I'll admit it, I'm a bit disappointed with how the deck works with Cities Skylines, though I am not surprised. This truly isn't the deck's fault since it's able to run a number of other simulators with excellent results. Tropico 5, for instance, booted right up with no settings modifications. The default controller configuration worked right off the bat, felt natural, and I was able to increase the graphics settings without issues. In Timberborn, a game that's in beta mind you, I was able to easily load into an existing save and get a silky smooth 30 FPS at all times with medium graphics settings. Civilization 5, my favorite version of Civilization, was probably my best experience on the deck. Though I had to raise the Steam launcher to be able to use the mouse for the first time and I was only able to run it in DirectX 9 mode, the game was able to run at a consistent 90 FPS in late game play on a small map with low graphics settings. The time in between turns was also acceptable and the controls were remarkable. Now if you're playing in handheld mode, I would not recommend unlocking the FPS for this game. It's going to kill your battery life and you won't notice any improvement above 60 FPS since it's a 60Hz panel. So where does this leave me on the deck, and would I get it for Cities Skylines? Well, I wouldn't get it for Cities Skylines, but that doesn't mean I regret my purchase. I love the Steam Deck. It's a great handheld system, and I can see that in the future, the deck is going to be better than it is today. Future games will be made with the deck in mind and will be optimized to play on this system. But Cities Skylines, a game that, let's admit it, is poorly optimized for modern hardware, is not made for the system and it does not perform well. That said, it's truly amazing to see what this thing can pull off with games that are well optimized for it or have been deck verified. The deck is going to be my go-to portable device where I'll be playing Civ, Tropico, and Timberborn on my next trip. Do you have a Steam Deck? Are you planning on getting one? Let me know down in the comments. And if you have one, let me know if you play Cities Skylines on it. Also, let me know if your experience has been different than mine and what settings you used to get it running. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.